To install a Pioner mini split, it's recommended to have the following general tools: set of Allen wrenches, measuring tape, power drill, hole saw, multimeter, safety glasses, scissors, cutter, wire stripper, hand tools such as flat and Phillips screwdrivers, 2 wrenches, leveler, and safety gloves. The following specialized tools are also recommended: a vacuum pump of at least 3.5 cfm, a refrigerant scale if adding refrigerant, a flaring and cutting set if shortening the line set, and a low side pressure gauge or a manifold gauge. Let's begin by showing you how to install the indoor unit. Be sure to have a working surface such as a table ready. Once you receive your order, start by confirming the model number on the indoor unit. It's recommended to cut along the seam at the bottom of the indoor unit box using a cutting tool, being careful not to cut too deeply and impact items inside. Use scissors to remove the security staples on either side of the box. And bend the flap of the side that the unit is resting on to tuck it underneath the box. You can now turn the box so that the open side faces the table, and lift the carton up so that only the contents remain on the table. All indoor units include a handheld remote. Now set the indoor unit on the table front facing up, and remove any protective materials such as impact cushions and foam sleeving. Locate and set aside all packed auxiliary items such as mounting templates, signal cables, product documentation, and any other included accessories. Check around the unit to ensure that the system arrived safely to your doorstep. The wall mounting bracket is almost always pre-attached to the rear for ease of shipping. Now begin by carefully removing any affixed packaging materials such as product labels, tape, and protective wrap. The indoor unit is now ready to be installed. The front cover can be unhinged and swiveled upward to expose the system internals such as filters, wiring diagrams, and other system components. Next, flip the indoor unit over and rest it on its front side, making sure that your work surface is smooth and free of debris to prevent blemishes on the panel. Using a screwdriver or drilling tool, remove the center set screw holding in the mounting bracket, and then unhinge the bracket from the indoor unit's bottom clips. Remove the mounting bracket once it's loosened, and set it aside for later. Now we'll introduce the pre-attached components on the rear side of the air handler. There will be 2 copper pipe ends, some models including plastic caps on the end to contain pressurized nitrogen within the unit that can be pressed to release some pressure. You will also have an insulated flexible tube through which condensate water will drain through to the final point of drainage. On the right bottom corner of the rear side there is a removable plastic cover through which the signal cable can be routed. The opposing side also has a detachable cover, exposing an alternative drain outlet location. You can use this port for draining water if more convenient than the default one. The drain tube and set of refrigerant piping, as well as the signal cable, can exit from the right hand or right rear side, so decide what's best for you according to your preferences. There is also the option to do a left side or left rear exit, which is recommended when possible since it avoids needing to bend the rear copper pipes. All of the different ways of routing the exit pipe will be shown later in the video. Reinstall the drain port cover and let's proceed with fastening the wall mounting plate. Using a ladder along with a measuring tape, decide what height the bottom edge of the indoor unit will reside and mark the location. 6.5 to 8 feet off the ground is typically recommended. Most systems include a mounting template which can be used to confirm that the mounting location will provide the necessary clearances. A small screwdriver can be used to punch out the mounting hole locations on the template, which will allow the locations on the wall to be easily marked. Prepare the indoor unit for mounting by first removing the signal cable inlet cover. Next, take one end of the communication cable, usually the side with spade terminals, and carefully fish it through the inlet hole. Flip the indoor unit over so that the front faces up. With the front panel of the unit lifted up, use a screwdriver to remove the fastening screw of the terminal block cover. Then use the screwdriver as leverage to pop out the cover to remove it. Carefully pull the end of the signal cable through the opening, with enough slack to wire in all 4 the individual conductors. Using a screwdriver, loosen the 4 screws of the terminal block which are used to secure the wire to each of the terminals. Insert each of the wires into their respective terminals. Taking note of the wire color order which should match outside. Use the screwdriver to securely fasten each of the 4 screws, making sure the wires have good contact. Next, loosen the screws that hold in the signal cable fastener, and place the cable leads into the slots of the fastener, ensuring that the cable won't be pinched when it's fastened in. This will prevent any strain on the cable if the other end is tugged on. Make sure that the wires have secure contact to each of the terminals, and that any unnecessary slack is pulled taut. Fasten the screws back into place using the screwdriver once the wire is in place. Place the terminal block cover back into its original position, and press down so that it snaps into place. Fasten the securing screw before closing the front panel of the indoor unit. Place the removable signal cable cover back into its original position. This can stay removed if doing a right side exit of the pipe and drain hose. If doing a right rear exit, the pre-attached copper stems, which by default are routed to the left, must be bent 90 degrees perpendicularly outward toward the rear of the unit. To minimize the risk of kinked or collapsed pipes, carefully bend the lines in slow and gradual movements, which can be done by hand or through the use of specialized tools. Carefully unravel the coiled copper line set, which is the set of pipes that connects the indoor unit and the outdoor unit together. Use a stable and flat surface, such as a table or the ground, to stabilize and straighten the line set through a pushing motion. Do not pull at the ends to uncoil it. Continue until the line set has been straightened. It's recommended to have 2 people for this process. If the indoor unit is pressurized with nitrogen, release the pressure using the cap buttons, or by slowly twisting the cap until a hissing sound is heard. To prevent unintentional torquing of the copper stems, 2 wrenches are needed for this step. Eyewear is also recommended for this step, in case of sudden ejection. Proceed until the threads of the flare connections are fully exposed. The 2 line connections are symmetrically offset to prevent overlap. Insert the drain extension over the insulated drain hose end, pulling it tightly over the protruding lip ring, and twist into place. Some waterproof seal tape can be adhered around the connection point, to provide additional security and prevent unwanted leaks. Next, it's time for the line set connections. Remove the plugs from the ends of the line set by holding onto them while turning the flare nuts. Carefully mate the surfaces of the male and female flares together, and hand tighten the flare nuts onto both of the threads. If you have any sealant materials, use those as well. Using 2 wrenches, one to hold the pipe and the other to turn the flare nut, tighten the flare connections to their necessary torque values. Ensure not to over-tighten, to avoid risk of damage to the flares, or under-tighten, to avoid risk of leaks. Now that the connections are fully made, the drain tube, line set, and signal cable can be wrapped with non-adhesive vinyl tape to simplify the passing of the bundle through the wall hole, as well as provide some insulation. Wrap the bundle tightly and securely, making sure that the drain hose stays on the bottom of the bundle, to prevent any water ingress or backflow. Tape or tie off the end once complete. If doing a left rear exit, the connections will be made indoors. Press the bundle into the cavity at the bottom of the unit so that it is flush, and start bending the line set extension. The cardboard template can be taped to the bottom of the unit as shown, to indicate the ideal point of bend that suits the wall hole. Continue bending gradually in long movements until a 90-degree angle is achieved. the center of the template wall hole can be punched out with a screwdriver. For side exits of the Lineset bundle, the respective plastic cover should be removed. There are cutouts available on either side of the indoor unit, which can be removed using a snipping tool such as pliers with a cutting blade at the end. The process is the same for either side, and will result in the Lineset being exposed on the interior wall. However, do note that in most cases a right-hand side exit is not recommended, as it involves bending the lines a full 180 degrees, which greatly increases the risk of a kink in the piping. For the left-hand side exit, press the pipe bundle into the cavity at the bottom of the unit so that it is flush, and close the snap-on cover over it so that it stays securely in place. Next, prepare for mounting the indoor unit wall plate by pressing the template against the wall and making sure that it is level. Next, use a marking tool to indicate the locations of the mounting hardware, as well as the center of the wall hole. Use a hole saw tool to drill a 2.5-inch hole in the wall that is centered on the mark made earlier. The hole should be at a slight downward angle of at least 1/4 inch per foot to allow for smooth gravity drain. Install the wall mounting plate onto the wall so that it is positioned correctly over the wall marks, and is both horizontally and vertically leveled. The indoor unit must be installed level on the wall to ensure the proper drainage of condensate water. Before mounting, it's also good practice to measure and ensure at the distance from the wall plate edge to the wall hole bundle will be suitable. After confirming, drill holes for all of the mounting hardware in the locations marked earlier. Standard drywall anchors are provided. Use field-supplied hardware for alternative mounting such as to wooden studs or other construction. Use the appropriate type of anchors for each application. For drywall mounting, insert each of the drywall anchors into the mounting holes. And use a hammer or mallet to tap them in until they are flush with the wall. Now place the mounting plate onto the wall, and drive the provided screws into the drywall anchors to fasten the plate to the wall. The plate must be installed flush against the wall so that the indoor unit will be flush after installation. Space between the wall and unit can cause unwanted noise or vibration. Once the mounting plate is fastened onto the wall, double-check that it is horizontally and vertically level, and secured flush against the wall. If your system came with a wall passage sleeve, it can be used to line the wall hole for passing through the indoor unit bundled components. Start by passing the other end of the Lineset bundle through the wall hole, and feed it in bit by bit. It's recommended to have a helper for this process. Finally, bring the indoor unit toward the wall while the helper pulls the bundle from the other side, and align the back of the indoor unit with the wall mounting plate's top hooks. The bottom of the unit can be lifted to facilitate working on any connection points if necessary, using a wedge or spacer. The process is identical for right rear exits of the bundled components, with one exception being that this scenario allows for the Lineset connections to be made on the other side of the wall, if desired. Nonetheless, pass the wrapped bundle through the wall bit by bit with the aid of a helper. And bring the indoor unit toward the wall plate's top mounting hooks. Press down on the unit near the bottom so that it latches into place. Check both sides of the unit to ensure that it is flush against the wall and fully seated. Now that the indoor unit is mounted, it's time to install the outdoor unit. Some models include the Lineset within this box. Use a cutting tool such as scissors or a knife to cut the straps that secure the outdoor unit box. The top of the box can then be lifted right off. Remove any plastic sleeves or protective packaging, and locate any accessory items to be used for the installation. Some of these components were used earlier in the video, so it's important to unbox everything before beginning installation, to ensure you have located all of the materials. Some included materials and accessories may not be shown here or may be sold separately. Many models also offer the installation kit in a separate box. Please refer to the installation manual or online listing to confirm what is included with your purchase. Prepare the outdoor unit mounting location, which should follow the parameters given in the installation manual. The outdoor unit can be mounted on wall brackets, on a slab, or floor brackets. The bottom of the outdoor unit will also drain water from the outlet port. A drain joint can be connected and fastened to flexible tubing if needing to route drainage to a different location. Carefully lift the outdoor unit and rest it onto the mounting location so that the bottom feet align with the 4 fastening points. Use the appropriate hardware to fasten all 4 of the outdoor unit's mounting feet to their proper location. If desired, rubber pads can be used to dampen vibrations. Next, use a screwdriver or a power drill to loosen each of the screws of the terminal block cover on the outdoor unit, and remove the cover to allow for wiring the supply power and signal cable into place. The inner side of the cover often contains an electrical wiring diagram, along with the serial number of the outdoor unit. The bottom end is where the supply power wire along with the communication cable will respectively enter into their wiring locations in the unit. So remove any protective caps to allow for wire to pass through. Start by feeding the supply power wire through the appropriate hole, until there is enough to comfortably wire it into place. Make sure that any wire that is handled directly is not electrified. It's recommended to use liquid-tight flexible conduit, such as the one sold on the Pioneer website, which will protect the wire and shield the electrical components. Use a screwdriver to loosen and flip open the wire fastener. Next, unscrew the terminal screws of the supply power side of the outdoor unit, which will be line, neutral, ground for 115-volt units, and line 1, line 2, and ground for 230-volt units. Feed the supply power wire, which should be stranded, unshielded, and appropriately sized, into each of the power side terminals. Use a screwdriver to fasten them securely into place, making sure that each of the copper ends are making good contact. Dislodge the green grounding screw on the metal plate. And fix the ground conductor of the signal cable in place after pulling the signal cable through the other hole of the cover. Next, loosen each of the screws on the signal side of the outdoor unit's terminal block. And fix the 3 signal leads into place in the same order as the indoor unit. Close the wire fastener over the 2 sets of wires, and secure it tightly using a screwdriver. Try not to pinch any of the wires when doing so. Pull the cover over the terminal block. And secure the cover into place using a screwdriver or a power drill. Next, loosen each of the screws of the refrigerant valve cover on the bottom side of the unit, and remove the cover. Loosen the protective caps covering the valves, flare connections, and the service port by hand or with the use of a wrench. The bigger valve is the low or gas/suction side and the smaller valve is the high or liquid side. The low side will have the service port where a pressure gauge can be connected. The 2 perpendicular points on the valves are the refrigerant release valves. Remove the caps and store them in a safe place for later. Remove the Lineset protective plugs. Carefully mate the surfaces of the male and female flares together, and hand tighten the flare nuts onto both of the threads. If you have any sealant materials, use those as well. Use a wrench to tighten the flare nuts to the proper torquing spec, being careful not to over-tighten the flared joints. Using an appropriately rated pressure gauge, connect one side, in this case the blue hose of the Pioneer low side gauge, to the service port on the outdoor unit. The yellow side connects to the 1/4 inch access port on the vacuum pump, which should be rated for at least 3.5 CFMs, in order to be able to draw a sufficient vacuum on the refrigerant circuit. Next, fully open the knob on the pressure gauge to allow the vacuum pump to freely access the refrigerant circuit of the system, keeping the gauge in a visible place. Turn on the vacuum pump to begin evacuation of the refrigerant circuit, and allow it to run until it draws down to a minimum of 500 microns. Once the vacuum has held for a minimum of 2 hours, ideally more than 4 hours. Cut the vacuum's access to the refrigerant circuit by closing the knob on the pressure gauge, and turn off the vacuum pump. Leave both the gauge and vacuum pump connected until all of the leak checking steps are completed. Using a hexagonal Allen wrench, turn one of the refrigerant release valves counterclockwise for approximately 1/4 of a revolution to allow some positive pressure via refrigerant into the lines. Monitor the gauge pressure reading to ensure it remains the same after an hour has passed, indicating that there are no leaks present. If the pressure reading does not rise in this step, ensure that your gauge tube pin has fully engaged the service port's Schrader valve. Remove the hose of the pressure gauge from the service port once it has been confirmed that the unit is free of leaks. Use the hexagonal Allen wrench to fully open both of the high and low side valves counterclockwise until it reaches the stoppers. Be cautious not to strip the valves. For additional precaution, or if leaks are encountered or suspected, prepare a container of soapy water, and spray all 4 of the connection points, 2 on the outside unit. And 2 on the inside unit, to check for any bubble formation. Place the cover caps back over the release valves and tighten them by hand. Put the service port protective cover into place as well and hand tighten. Use a wrench to tighten all protective covers to the proper torque spec. With the pipes fully connected, pull any insulation sleeving closer to the connection points to prevent moisture from entering. Place the refrigerant valve cover back over the valves, and slot it into place. Use a screwdriver to fasten the screws back in. With the electrical and refrigerant steps done, the outdoor unit installation is completed. Tidy up any last remaining components such as the exposed portion of the line set or any other accessorial items. The last check prior to startup is the drainage test. Lift up the indoor unit front panel and remove any filters that are in the way of the indoor unit's coil. With the coil exposed, take a bottle or glass of drinking water and pour approximately 1 cup of water over the coil. All of the water should drain from the tube successfully. If water leaks from the unit itself, confirm that it is level, both drain ports are fully sealed, and the drain tube is at a continuous downward slope. All safety checks are now complete. Remove the slide-out filters, and insert any auxiliary freshening filters into the middle of the main filters as shown. Note that some Pioner models have the filter on top of the unit. Refer to your manual for specific filter location according to your model. Put the filters back into place once done. Now that you know how to remove and replace the filters, be sure to clean them regularly to ensure optimal performance and air quality. Close the front panel of the indoor unit, and press down on the bottom so that it clicks into place. The installation is now complete. Use the included handheld remote to turn on the indoor unit by aiming it at the receiver, and set your desired temperature. Test both the heating and cooling modes, but note that heat mode won't work over 86 Fahrenheit and cool mode when it's below 5 Fahrenheit outside. Place your hand over the indoor unit's louver to feel for conditioned air. Heat mode can take up to 10 minutes to warm up and begin heating, while cool mode results are usually rapid. Enjoy your new system.